So you'd claimed $5 million in damages and you had received way far below what you had asked for. In the meantime, though, while you were waiting for that money to come in, you were faced with a decision to make. What was that decision?
Yeah, so but when we won the case, then from there on, the next phase of the litigation was, to prepare for damages by calculating all the damages that we thought we had suffered. That was to the level of about 5 million. But then you have to prove it, and it's all subject to cross-examination again, and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
The other party can make claims otherwise or whatever. So by the time, but as I was going through that process, we were still on the boycott, and I had to then make a decision to close the company, or for all intents and purposes, we would go bankrupt unless I, got the decision on that part, and we didn't. That was still waiting for the judge to prepare that. That took about a year.
Okay.
And so I could not go on the way we were. So I made then a proposal under the Bankruptcy Act. So where somebody in a situation where they are losing their liquidity can call or engage an individual that then is the executor of the company and works with the creditors and makes a proposal to creditors. We did that, and I committed virtually everything that I had. I had quite a bit of property around the city and other resources in terms of equipment, and I pledged all the liquidity or whatever came out of the court case would be committed to the creditors as well. So that was accepted by 98%, and so it allowed me then to keep my one building and one house, and then went forward. And but for all intents and purposes, I started from the bottom again.
Yeah, you had to start from scratch. So what was that like again? A lot of people, I think, in your position, I know myself included, I feel like I would have just given up. But you kept going.
Yeah.
What kept you going?
Well, because I believed that obviously we had won the case in the sense that the unfairness of the grading system had been changed because of us. And then the second one, I still believed in building a sawmill and all the things that I came here for. And I still had employees, and we would meet on a weekly basis, although I had only 12 or 14 left. In fact, W5 did a program on it where I'm standing there with my employees, telling them, we hang in there, we'll get started again. So we started again very small, and then gradually build up again. The big question, Veronica, is that in my mind is that since we all knew that what was happening was wrong, unfair and unsafe, that organizations like Canadian Lumber Standards, CSA, the politicians and everybody else didn't do nothing. It was not me that should have to change the grading rule system that was flawed and in fact created a danger because of fraudulent practices. It should not have been me or anybody else. I know it would have, I was fortunate that I had the ability to withstand, at least up to a certain level, all the pressure that goes with it. But it would have, and I then always ask myself, how many people have been destroyed by this? And that's one of the reasons also that, I'm now, after 30 years, more public about it, that we have to learn from it, including the industry, in terms of there is nothing more important than credibility in your brand. Still affects us today as an industry in terms of that's what we have to do. That's why I did what I did. And the other part is that it hopefully gives courage to people that being affected by adversity and difficulty, that they know there is the court system in all its imperfections, but it is a difficult process to be successful in court, because usually what happens, although it's the best we have, that money usually wins because they can hire the best of lawyers, and a lot of times the judicial process has nothing to do with justice, has everything to do with money. and the ability to withstand a lot of pressure. So what I say is avoid wherever you can litigation, because it's not easy and it's hard on people and families, you know.
Of course, yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that, you know, you were restarting your company, your business from the ground up again. But that wasn't the last time that was going to happen to you.
Nor the first.
No, nor the first, no.
I think already about 3 times then.
Yeah. So once again, you have to start from scratch. And this is because the Liberals come into power in BC and things in the industry begin to change. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the industry typical has been very cyclical. It goes through all the ups and downs and ups and downs. And if I kind of look back in particular, you know, since the time I started Brink Forest Products in 1975, I think there have been about 8 up and downs and a couple very severely. The one in particular that is on my mind is that, you know, in 2000 and even around the late 90s, again, there was a major downturn. And then, you know, then the next one was that the Liberals came into government in 2001, I believe, and you know, they made some already. And let me step back a little bit. Is I had been, you know, again recovering from 1990.
Right.
You know, when I finally started again from the bottom up. The problem always was access to fiber, getting lumber, and so I became very proactive in both in government as well as you know, in government meaning trying to, how do we create more value added, meaning adding more value, social and economic, to the resource. And obviously we were secondary manufacturers. I didn't have trees. And you know, so that's why I did all these other things. You know, figured out how do we make different products, like gluing things together, and you know, all that stuff is all part of what I like.
Right.
And anyway, so in the mid '90s, you know, I was very active in forming, and I was the founding president of an organization called BC Value Added Association. And it had 8 associations and about 800 member companies. So those were the BC Council Value Added Producers. And so that became very active in lobbying government on how do we also are heard and how can we further stimulate that sector rather than making a lot of dimension lumber and shipping it all over the place. How can we add more value?
Okay.
So that was very successful. The other thing that I was quite involved in, then again, I was back on the board of Kofi and was very active there and doing all kinds of things. And then I also here in Prince George was active in the you know, with the College of New Caledonia, working on how do we create more trades people, you know, because the industry as it is changing needs more tradespeople, and I always work closely with them. Another initiative that you know, that I during that period was very active in is the Woodworks initiative. Is that how do we get more lumber into buildings? You know, because to me it always was that if we bring people from other countries over here and we want to tell them about the forest industry and the beautiful timber and wood that we have here that they should be buying, when they land at the airport here, you know what is the first thing they notice?
What is it?
If it is so good, why are you not using it? Right? And that kind of became an initiative, started really you know, by the federal government, but the pilot was here in Prince George at the College of New Caledonia, the Woodworks initiative. Even today, that has spread through Canada and through North America, where the use of wood is much more being
prominent.
Used, much more common than it was before. Very good initiative, and I'm a great believer in that. And then I also got involved. You know, we contributed to the Trades and Technology Center, and it was named after me, and I'm very honored by that, obviously. But I think we can do more. We're working now on something where, you know, we want, you know, a center of excellence here attached to the College of New Caledonia that kind of reflects what BCIT is, but in a smaller way, but not in different from UNBC, the university, freestanding university. I was also involved quite heavily in that when we started to, drive government into funding this freestanding university, and I believe we can do the same with the Center of Excellence here, something not unsimilar to that.
Perfect.
Coming back to what you were saying, is that when changes in government are frequent here, and so when the Liberals came, BC Liberals came in 2001, there was a push, major push now the secondary manufacturers that were reasonably well established. They had access to fiber that had been accomplished during the 90s with the then incumbent, I think it was the NDP government, that because the key to, if you want to attract capital investments into the secondary manufacturing, you have to have reasonable expectations of access to fiber. That had then to a certain extent been established. When the Liberals came in 2003, they made major changes to forest policy. Probably the most drastic changes that had been made in 50 years.
Oh, wow. And changes that they thought would benefit the industry, but had a hard impact on you.
It would affect some parts of the industry. It would be adverse to communities, still is today. So where there wasn't, the timber in the province of British Columbia belonged to you and me, the people. 97% of the timber in the province, not always so in other places, but here in the province of British Columbia belongs to the people. And then the objective is and should be to add the most social and economic value we can to the resource here and in the regions where it grows. So that's so that there was then the concept of pertinency, meaning that if you harvest the timber here, you should manufacture it here. So that concept was then eliminated. There was another part that made timber available to secondary manufacturers who then could trade it for lumber with companies. That initiative was eliminated. And a number of other ones. So from the 800 companies that were part of the BC Council Value Added Wood Processors, today there are likely less than 200.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Although I would hope, and we are on a daily basis working on that, to hopefully change policy again and bring in more investment in further manufacturing, stabilize the primary sector, and create more value in the land base so we grow more timber per hectare here, like they do in Sweden and in other places. Anyway, that's a whole discussion in its own, but I'm passionate about all of that, right?
Of course.
As you noticed, probably.
Yeah, of course, I have noticed. So what exactly was it, though, that caused the industry to teeter then? What exactly was it that the Liberals
What in particular happened, Veronica, very observing from you, is that because I told you some of the elements already, but the other one that they did is they said, we have to export more lumber to other places, in particular Asia. Now, with all due respect to our friends in Asia, that in particular China, they are usually bottom feeders, the lowest cost wood. So all the fiber that the secondary sector had relied upon, other than the small business program that was being eliminated, now they pushed all the low-grade lumber that had been used for secondary manufacturing into China. A lot of it funded by government programs, and to ship it all in there.
So was that for money then, on their part, or?
Industry reacts a lot of times to government, and the whole issue is about access to timber. If there's an initiative to ship more wood to China, then if it makes sense, then maybe they do it. In the long term, there may have been a slight advantage. I'm not even sure that there was. Like now, not virtually none of it is going on, at least not by far as much. But the initiative was ill-advised. All that wood could have created thousands of jobs in BC, and still would have been profitable to the others. point that I'm making, case in point, is that now we have a primary sector that is getting more and more modernized, less employment because if we had a secondary sector complementing the primary, then the industry as a whole would be more successful. And I believe that even the major primaries now believe that.
Okay.
So the industry again, now we're talking about early 2001 that we talked about forest policy, and then the next downturn was in 2006, and I had acquired the largest secondary manufacturing plant after all going right under the pun. So in Alberta, and we were turning it to be again a big company, and the company was Palliser Lumber in Crossfield, Alberta. I bought the plant there, and then then we had the largest secondary manufacturing plant again, early 2000 here in BC, and then the largest one in Alberta. Wow. Then what happened is we had the major downturn. The market, financial market, and the economy was slowly going down in the first quarter, and then by 2007 it was hitting bottom. So I had to then make a decision, because there I had the plant in Alberta.
Right.
And then I was approached by an income trust that was that was then a tax play that worked for people that accumulated a number of companies. They had tax benefits, and so they wanted to buy my plant in Alberta. I sold it to them. I owned it for about 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And sold it to them, made a nice profit on it. The plan did not succeed. It failed. It was bought by one multi-billionaire, the Clay Riddell in Alberta, that had a number of income trusts, mainly oil and gas, but unfortunately they did not survive because the downturn was so steep and so deep. Yeah. That was one of when I say about all the cycles, the one that was in particular deep was starting in first quarter 2006. Then 7, 8, 9, it kind of climbed back out again. So we kind of survived all of that. And then obviously the next one was, the one that, we are just gone through now.
Yeah, I actually wanted to touch on that right now, because you do touch on it, I think, a little bit later in Against All Odds. But for people in the forestry industry right now, I mean, I feel like it's all doom and gloom. You read the news, it doesn't sound very promising, but you see a future. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, no question about it. Canada is just a beautiful country, right? And then BC in particular is, I just love it here. For growing fiber in forest, there is no place as suitable as BC would be, Alberta to a certain extent, but in particular BC and into Alberta, interior and in coast is different, but all absolutely just perfect. A lot of the forest that we have in the interior is still virgin forest. It's not reforested and reharvested. If you go to Sweden, we probably have already rotations that is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times rotated. Here we're still working in that virgin forest, and although it is being replanted, but we're still doing that. Some of them sometimes become old and aged. It's no different than people. Then it's more subject to disease. And obviously, what happened here, another major downturn in the market is that in 2000, in that area, late 90s, there were indications of a pine beetle epidemic.
Right. Yes.
And a lot has been written about it, and I'm sure you have heard about it, and the people that watch this have heard about it. So it kind of virtually wiped out all the lodgepole pine in the interior of British Columbia, probably 75% of it. And so for the next 10 to 15 years, there is enough wood. When it started in the early 15, right up to about 3-4 years ago, and even now they're still harvesting some of the dead wood. Okay. But the value of the wood is going down, and the recovery of making it into fiber has gone down. So as a result of that, it was then the next thing that happened again, following pine beetle, was the spruce beetle that started in the Peace region and moved east of Prince George and affected the spruce. as a result of all of that, you know, the how it works in British Columbia is that you know, we have our forest, and then there is a calculation of how do we maintain the same volume that allows us to harvest a certain volume. If a tree takes 100 years to grow, hypothetically speaking, then we plant accordingly that we always will maintain the same volume. With the pine beetle, it reduced that whole volume by very significantly, and as a result, in the interior, probably more than 20 mills have shut down permanently, and there may be some more that will follow. That's bad, and you know, and it's one of those things that is related to, I believe, in a way, global warming and all the other things, and you know, so the fact remains that we still have just an absolute fabulous area of land in Canada and in BC that lends itself for growing forest. We have to manage it likely more, plant more trees, manage it better, you know, and don't spray it with poisons, you know, do all that stuff to be good stewards to the resource. Then it will yield much more cubic meters per hectare. I use a lot of times Sweden as an example that grows probably 70-80% more per hectare than we do.
Oh wow.
By intensive forestry. And then, so as that arst volume is going down, we are, as we speak here today, the government is looking at what can they do to be more intensive forestry, and in terms of, from an industry perspective, how do we add more social and economic value? A lot of mills now, that has happened in BC, and a lot of the larger mills that have gone through the problems with not enough timber, market bringing down, that have left BC and have started investing in other areas. Canfor is a good example, West Fraser, you know, Interfor, and others. More than 50 mills have been bought in the southeastern United States.
Okay.
Southern yellow pine that's being grown on the old cotton fields there, and you know, so massive industry. Also, investments are being made in Sweden. Not much investment is being made in BC because after the past government, and then not being able to be competitive on a global basis for the primaries, they look for investments elsewhere. We have to make our industry again to the point of that being profitable here. And then we have to attract secondary manufacturing and create an industry that is innovative. Primaries with intensive secondary is the new model going forward.
Okay. Oh wow. So yeah, it's great to see that, you know, you definitely believe in BC's forestry industry.
No question. There is a great future. No question.
Now I kind of want to come back around to chapter 6 and the way that you end it. You end it with a bit of a punch, saying that you had a decision to make and you either had to go big or you had to go home.
Yeah.
So what was that about?
Well, we got to the point that you know, that especially after the downturn, that I then had to make a decision of, do I keep growing the company? I cannot stand still, you know, so that if we don't grow forward, then we will go backwards.
Right.
And so then we became more aggressive. I would say we, because although I own the company, but I always feel it's the company and me, so I always refer to it as we. You know, so I'm the sole shareholder of the company, of all the companies that I have. You know, anyway, so then I decided to, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go forward. So I acquired a plant in 2003 in Houston, another one in Vanderhoof in 2017. Then we bought Interior Warehousing, that is the largest warehousing company in northern BC, and does logistics and warehousing. We're growing that company, already have doubled it virtually in size.
Oh wow.
And then our company, you know, again, we are planning on building another building, employing another 75 people, and I'm virtually convinced that we will be double the size of where we are today 2 or 3 years from now.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Impressive. Perfect. Well, I think we will leave chapter 6 at that. I appreciate your time and talking about chapter 6 against all odds. And well, we'll talk a little bit about chapter 7 in the next episode.
Thanks, Veronica. Appreciate it.